The April jobs report lands an incredible gut punch to the Biden administration, a staggering miss that undercuts everything Biden has been trying to sell this country about his handling of COVID and his economic plan. If you're wondering why we're saying the addition of 266,000 jobs is such a disappointment, it's because economists far and wide expected the nation to add maybe 1 million jobs, maybe more. And usually the estimates on this are reasonably close. This was not. This time the actual number was off by nearly 75% in the wrong direction. We're going to talk about that with Newsmax host Steve Cortez here in just a few minutes. It's a big deal, though. Equally as bad, as millions get vaccinated every single day and the country is opening up, a time when economic growth should be a layup, unemployment somehow increased to 6.1%. with data showing that hiring was a huge letdown in April. Make no mistake, this is a full-blown disaster for the Biden White House, being painted as slow and steady progress. Yeah, right. The jobs report dropped this morning. It was so shocking that the experts who do this every single day could not believe their eyes. Steve Leisman over at CNBC, a veteran, thought this was a typo.
Sorry about that. It came across very quickly here. It looks like 266,000. It looks like it was a big disappointment at 266, but maybe I have that wrong. Let me double check the Bureau website here. 1 second. Yes, 266 is correct.
He had to double check on live TV. That's not good. Again, it's a very big deal. The president has been moving around the country trying to sell his jobs and infrastructure plan. Biden wants $2 trillion of your money to pay for about $200 million in actual, or I'm sorry, $200 billion in actual infrastructure, and put the other 90% of that money into a liberal wish list, of course. He was rushed out today to address this horrible jobs report at noon. He popped up on TV. Here's Biden with the spin.
Quite frankly, we're moving more rapidly than I thought we would. But when we passed the American Rescue Plan, I want to remind everybody, it was designed to help us over the course of a year, not 60 days. Today, there's more evidence that our economy is moving in the right direction. But it's clear we have a long way to go.
Spinny, spin, spin. Most Americans will probably buy that, especially with the mainstream media, of course, softening the blow on all this. Naturally, the real reason for this bad report, though, is Donald Trump.
When we came in, we inherited a year of profound economic crisis and mismanagement on the virus. And we proposed, what we propose is going to work.
The situation is pretty obvious. The Trump juice just ran out. The last administration lit up our economy like we haven't seen since Ronald Reagan. Remember 3.5% unemployment before COVID? It was insane. One hilarious moment today was watching Jen Psaki try to spin these bad numbers, stating what is factually true without any real context. Take a listen.
We've created about an average of 500,000 jobs a month over the last 3 months. That's in stark contrast to about 60,000 jobs a month during the final 3 months of President Trump's administration.
Sure, that's true. The numbers are better now than under Trump in the last few months because Trump left during what was like the height of the pandemic, before the vaccine had really even come out or been put in anybody's arms, except maybe Biden's. The timing for Biden could not have been better on this. There is no better time to walk in to the White House than right after an economic disaster. The numbers should be exploding up. It's all great news. After everything goes down to the bottom, you can't go any worse. And that's exactly why economists expected 1 million new jobs this month. That's a big number. That's what's expected. Trump teed this up for Biden perfectly, and yet somehow they screwed it up. And now they're trying to blame Trump, because politics is just hysterical. This was all so easy. It's another unforced error, of course, just like the border. The lockdown liberals couldn't help themselves. Biden blames COVID, but there is more to this story.
And there are millions of Americans out there who, through no fault of their own, have been knocked flat on their back this past year. The virus stole their jobs.
So COVID was the problem, it's true. But it's becoming evident that the handling of COVID was far worse than the actual virus itself. There are clear indications the lockdowns were ineffective and far too restrictive. A lot of this damage did not need to be done. No, Mr. Biden, blue state restrictions have taken most of these jobs, not just COVID. We see Florida thriving. We see blue states that lock down as hard as they possibly could with some of the worst COVID numbers in the country. Look at Michigan. Look at California. Here's Biden's own labor secretary, Marty Walsh.
We also have to deal with childcare and schools, and those are two barriers right now, in my opinion, that are keeping people from getting back into the workforce as well, because their children are at home, they're learning remotely, or their childcare facilities aren't open.
And they should have been open. They should be open now. It's ridiculous that they're not. Once we knew lockdowns were not generally effective, and we've known that for a while now, once we saw California explode with COVID, even though everything was locked down, because we figured out that people, they're just getting together inside their homes, at that moment, everybody knew what was going on. We should have opened up completely. But the Democrats, the liberals, refuse to admit when they're wrong. They are stubborn, and they're still making you pay for that every single day. Here are the March unemployment rates for 3 different states. Florida, which has opened up, is at 4.7%. Look at that beautiful number. And then look at California and New York. Look at that. The 2 highest unemployment rates in the country outside of Hawaii, which is as liberal as it gets. And Florida's fantastic economy costs them relatively nothing. Their COVID rates are as good or better than California and New York. But the liberals will not admit that they botched this entire pandemic. It is far too costly. And on top of that, they love having you locked down. They love having you dependent on them. They don't want you working. They don't want you not needing government. They want this government as big as they can get it. So they want you to ignore the facts. Rather than open up, let's just print more money and send it to everybody we can. Much more work.
The American Rescue Plan was for the whole year. It plays out over a year, and it's working. But we can't let up. This jobs report makes that clear. We've got too much work to do.
So much more work, Biden, they're talking about that, is code for much more spending. But even liberal Democrats are growing concerned about Biden's out-of-control spending. He's talking about spending $6 trillion in additional money on top of the budget. Larry Summers was Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary, Obama's director of the National Economic Council. He helped navigate the 2008 financial crisis. This is what he said about Biden's economic plan just a couple months ago. Summers, in a headline here from Bloomberg, Summers sees least responsible fiscal policy in 40 years, saying that Biden's spending will risk 1970s-style hyperinflation. We're seeing it happen right before our eyes. If you check the price of gas, look at lumber, look at building materials, look at some household items as well. Some bad times. We are in a mess. And don't you miss those gas prices under Trump, by the way? You're filling up the car right now, it costs a lot of money. If you drive a lot, you definitely notice. Oil price watchers say gasoline prices are set to soar this summer. Of course. Who's not expecting that at this point, watching these trends? Congresswoman Lauren Boebert tweeted this: when the economy did well under Trump, liberals yelled, that is Obama's economy. Now that it's doing terrible under Obama, awfully under Biden, they're yelling, that is Trump's economy. There you go. Wrong twice. Republicans don't get everything right, of course, but on the economy, it's a no-brainer. You go with the Republican every time. Let's take a look at the data again. Here are the highlights from President Trump's economy. Unemployment February 2020. About 14 months ago, right before the pandemic, 3.5%, the lowest since 1950. The final 3 years of Trump gave us 6.4 million jobs. Middle class incomes, this is a big one, rose by $6,000. That's a lot of money. That was President Trump's record. Now we get to watch President Biden's.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.